That part of the house hasn't been mine for a long time. Technically, of course, I own the whole house 2 floors on quiet Cedar Street in Miles City, a well-kept lawn, an old oak tree in the yard. But in fact, I exist only in my bedroom and the common areas, and that only when my son-in-law Waldo is not organizing another party with friends. My name is Eustace Belcher, 64, former building inspector, widower. Retired, a homeowner, and as I recently found out, a burden on my own daughter. Tonight at dinner, I tried again to talk to Cassidy. She sat staring at her phone, occasionally raising her fork to her lips. Waldo was absent, said he was rehearsing with the band. This band is 4 big-age dreamers playing instruments in Tony Clintock's garage. I haven't heard them play in 2 years, only talk of future glory. Cassie, I began, using her childhood nickname, we need to discuss the electric bill. It's almost double this month. She mumbled, not looking away from the screen. Cassidy, my voice became sterner, put the phone away, please. She sighed with that peculiar intonation she'd acquired after marriage, as if every conversation with me was unbearable torture. What's so important about the bill? Just pay it as usual. It's not about money, it's about respecting resources. You and Waldo leave all the appliances on, the lights on in the empty rooms, the air conditioner running 24 hours a day. Cassidy finally looked up. Light brown, like Martha's, they looked at me with undisguised irritation. We live in the 21st century, Dad. Everybody does it. Not everyone, I argued. And it's not just the bills. You live like there's no tomorrow. Waldo's been promising for 3 months to fix that leaky faucet in the bathroom. He's busy, she interrupted. He's got work and music. You're retired. Why don't you fix it yourself? Because every time I try to do something around the house, your husband says I'm meddling in his business. Remember what happened when I replaced the door hinges in the living room? Cassidy rolled his eyes. You chose a different style on purpose, even though he asked me not to touch it. I chose hinges that don't squeak every time I open the door, I sighed. Cassidy, this can't go on. You're adults, but you're acting like teenagers. 5 years ago, when Martha was gone, Cassidy and I were closer. She helped me through my grief, and I supported her financially while she was in college. Then came Waldo Parrish, tall, with perpetually disheveled hair and tattoos on his forearms, a tech support call center operator with rock star ambitions. Temporary job, he explained, until the band signs a contract. Cassidy liked him for his freedom from convention, as she put it. After 6 months of dating, they married, and Waldo moved in with us, although I offered to help them with the down payment on their own place. We can't commit ourselves to a mortgage right now, Cassidy said at the time. We need the freedom to self-actualize. Self-fulfillment took the form of endless parties, going to bars and festivals, and buying expensive gadgets on credit. When Cassidy took a job as an insurance claims processing specialist, I hoped they would start saving money. Instead, their debts only grew. You just don't understand modern life, Cassidy said, getting up from the table. We live in the present, not save our happiness for retirement. I lived in the present too, I replied, but that didn't stop me from thinking about the future. My mom and I bought this house, saving every dime, traveled, helped you with your education. All of this was possible because we planned and respected what we had. 25 again, she moaned, picking up the dishes. Don't start your lecture about how hard you worked. Times have changed. The laws of math haven't. You can't spend more than you earn all the time. She put the plates in the sink with a clatter. You know what? Waldo and I were talking about the apartment. Maybe we really should go. I felt a prick in my heart. Despite all the conflicts, the thought of Cassidy leaving hurt. After Martha's death, the house seemed too empty and big for one. I'm not kicking you out, I said quietly. I just want you to be more responsible. Responsible in your own way, she retorted. Waldo's right. You're trying to control our lives because you've run out of your own. Her words burned like a slap in the face. My life is over? Yeah. After Martha left, a lot of things changed. I lost a part of myself, but I kept on living, working 2 more years before I retired, maintaining the house, taking care of Cassidy. My life isn't over, I said more firmly than I meant to, and I'm not trying to control you. But as long as you live in my house— Exactly, she interrupted. In your house, and you keep reminding me of that. Waldo and I are grateful for a roof over our heads, but not for constant lecturing. The front door slammed and Waldo came into the kitchen, smelling of beer and cigarettes a meter away. What's the argument about? He asked, putting his arm around Cassidy's shoulders. Is the old man teaching us about life again? Don't call me an old man, I said, trying to stay calm. Sorry, Eustace, he smirked. Just kidding. Cassidy snuggled up to him as if looking for protection. Daddy's not happy about our spending again. Oh, come on, Eustace. Waldo flopped back in his chair, stretching out his long legs. Life's too short for counting sense. Look, I brought us something. He pulled a bottle of whiskey out of his jacket pocket. Expensive scotch. Let's drink to the family, shall we? It's almost 11 o'clock at night and tomorrow's a work day, I pointed out. One drink won't hurt. He was already getting glasses out of the cabinet. Cassie, honey, come join us. I knew that one drink would turn into half a bottle, and tomorrow Cassidy would complain of a headache and be late for work. It had happened more than once. No thanks, I rose from the table. I have a meeting tomorrow at 7:30. With who? Cassidy looked surprised. With the guys from the fishing club. We're going to Lake Kogatama. You're still fishing at your age? Waldo chuckled as he poured the whiskey. Aren't you afraid you'll fall asleep and fall off the boat? I didn't answer his teasing. Good night, I said, and left the kitchen. In my room, I sank into the chair by the window. This room had once belonged to Martha and me. Now her half of the bed was empty, and on the nightstand was a picture of the two of us in front of the Grand Canyon. Our last trip together before she got sick. I often talked to her in my mind. What would you say, Martha? How do I get through to Cassidy? You always had the right words. The next morning I left before they woke up. Fishing was good. I caught 4 trout. When I got home, I found Waldo had thrown another party. Music was blaring in the living room, strangers were sitting on our couch, and someone was smoking in the backyard. I walked silently to my room, locked myself in, and turned on the TV to drown out the noise. The party ended well past midnight. In the morning, the kitchen looked like the aftermath of a hurricane. I silently took out the trash, washed the dishes, scrubbed the wine stains off the couch. When Cassidy finally came downstairs, I was finishing up. Why didn't you wake us up? She asked, pouring coffee. We would have helped clean up. Like last time? I looked at her. When you slept in until 3 in the afternoon and then left for your friend's house? She shrugged. Sorry, we were just celebrating Dave's birthday. And the last party you were celebrating something too. And the party before that. Dad, she set the cup aside. If you're so annoyed with our friends, we can move out. It's not about friends, it's about respect. This is my house. 25 again, she rolled her eyes. Your house, your rules. You know, sometimes I don't think you're happy we're here. I took a deep breath. Cassie, I'm glad you're here, but not happy about the way you treat the house and me. How do we feel about you? She crossed her arms over her chest, like you're invisible, or as someone who is supposed to provide for your comfort without asking questions. That's not true, she was indignant. We are grateful to you. It's just that you're always criticizing our way of life. At that moment, Waldo entered the kitchen, disheveled and wrinkled. What are you arguing about? He yawned, pulling a beer out of the fridge. 10 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't help myself. Only a wedge can cure a hangover, he winked. What's the big deal? It's my day off. You get 4 days off a week, I pointed out. I work night shifts, man. It's exhausting. Don't call me old man. All right. He held up his hands. Eustace, take it easy. I turned to Cassidy. We talked about mutual respect. I will no longer financially support your lifestyle. What do you mean? She frowned. I pay all the bills for the house, buy most of the groceries, gave you money for car repairs. From now on, you pay your own expenses. Rent, food, gasoline, all shared. Waldo choked on his beer. Are you serious? Rent in your own house? I pay property taxes, insurance, utilities. Why should I do it alone when there's 3 of us? Because you're our father, Cassidy exclaimed. Families help each other. That's right, I nodded. And I've helped you for years. You're a grown married woman now. It's time to take responsibility for your life. Cassidy looked as if I'd slapped her. Are you giving up on me? No, sweetheart. I refuse to indulge your irresponsibility. Waldo put his arm around her shoulders. Don't be upset, Cassie. We'll get through this. You've got a good job, I've got a promotion coming up. And if your father wants to play landlord, that's his right. It's not a game, I tried to say calmly. This is life. Adult life. The next few weeks were a real challenge. Cassidy and Waldo pretended I didn't exist. They paid the first utility bill, but each time they found new excuses. A late paycheck, unexpected car repair costs. At the same time, Waldo bought a new electric guitar and Cassidy bought a designer bag. I held firm. No more loans, no more paychecks, no more bills, no more checks. They started treating me like the enemy. Whereas before we sometimes ate dinner together, now they ate separately, often away from home. My presence in the common rooms elicited defiant sighs and glances from them. I think it's time we talked about your future, I said one evening when I found them both at home. You're adults. You need your own place. Are you kicking us out? Cassidy raised her eyebrows. No, but I'm suggesting we think about being on our own. I can help with the down payment on the apartment. So you want to pay us off? Waldo crossed his arms over his chest. First you demand rent and now you're pushing us out of the house. I'm offering to help you get started on your own. There's a difference. What if we don't want to leave? Cassidy asked. This is my home too. After I die, yes, I said. Not now. That's amazing, she splashed her hands together. Now you're threatening to disinherit me? I'm not threatening, I sighed. I'm just telling you the facts. I own this house and I decide who lives in it. Come on, Cassie, Waldo tugged on her arm. Let's not talk when your father's in such a mood. They left, slamming the door loudly. I stayed in the kitchen, staring out the dark window. What am I doing wrong, Martha? Why has our daughter turned into a selfish person who only sees me as a wallet and a nuisance? I couldn't sleep for a long time that night, listening to them arguing in their room. Their voices, muffled by the walls, sounded angry and resentful. I caught phrases like, old cheapskate, and out of your mind. Words I never expected to hear from my daughter. The situation grew more tense each day. I tried to leave the house early in the mornings to avoid confrontations. I visited the library, wandered around the park, met up with friends from the fishing club. Anything to avoid feeling like a stranger in my own home. I locked myself in my room in the evenings, listening through the wall as Cassidy and Waldo discussed my stinginess and senile paranoia. On Thursday, I woke up to a strange odor. Walking into the kitchen, I found a skillet with the remains of a burnt dinner left on the stove on. The fire was off. Apparently, the automatic timer had gone off, but the oil was smoking. I opened the windows, ventilated the room, and only then noticed the empty wine bottles and traces of ash on the countertop. Another party I hadn't even been warned about. At breakfast, I decided to talk to Cassidy directly, without Waldo. She came downstairs around 10, looking crumpled and annoyed. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound neutral. She nodded without looking at me and reached for the coffee pot. "Cassie, we need to have a serious talk." "About what this time?" Her voice sounded tired. "We paid the bills last week." "It's not about the bills. You left the stove on overnight last night. That's dangerous." She rolled her eyes. Nothing happened. But it could have. I tried to keep my emotions in check. Cassie, I haven't recognized you these past few months. You've become irresponsible, indifferent. It's not like you. She looked at me with a challenge. Maybe this is the real me. Maybe I was just trying to live up to your expectations before. My expectations don't include regular drinking and disregard for safety, I sighed. Remember how your mom and I taught you? Respect for yourself and others, responsibility for your actions. It's starting. She glanced defiantly at her watch. I have a meeting in an hour. Why don't we cut the lecture short? It's not a lecture. I felt resentment building up inside. It's an attempt to get through to you. What happened to that determined girl who wanted to help people? I grew up and realized that your ideals were outdated. The world's changed, Dad. Everybody lives for themselves now. Not everyone, I argued. And it's not about generations. Decency and responsibility will never become obsolete. She finished her coffee and put the cup in the sink without rinsing it. If that's all, I should get ready. No, it's not. I stood up, blocking her path. I want to know what's going on. Why are you letting Waldo affect you like this? Her face changed instantly. Her eyes narrowed. Don't you dare talk about him like that. Waldo is my husband, and he's the only one who truly understands me. He's manipulating you, Cassie. He's turning you against me. It's your own fault, she raised her voice. You never gave him a chance. You looked down on his music, his work, his friends from the beginning. That's not true, I shook my head. I was glad you were happy, but when his irresponsibility started to affect you. Stop calling us irresponsible. She slapped her palm on the table. We just live differently than you do. Why can't you accept that? Because your lifestyle is destroying you. Face it, Waldo drinks almost every day. His temp job has lasted years, and the band has never progressed beyond garage rehearsals. You're in debt, but you keep spending money on crap. We spend money on things that make us happy, she screamed. Maybe you should learn from that. Ever since Mom died, you've turned into a sad old man who does nothing but criticize others. Her words hurt more than she could have imagined. Martha. She always had a way of smoothing things over between Cassidy and me. Without her, it's like we've lost touch. I just want what's best for you, I said quietly, like any father would. If you really wanted the best, you'd stop meddling in our lives. She stepped around me and headed for the stairs. And yes, we'll pay for your precious stove if it's broken. It's not about the stove. I couldn't take it anymore and raised my voice. It's about the fact that you could have started a fire. You could have gotten hurt. But I didn't, she shouted from the stairs. Stop being so dramatic. I was alone in the kitchen feeling completely powerless. How do you get through to someone who won't listen? That evening I returned home to find that Waldo had installed a new sound system in the living room. Huge speakers occupied the corner where a bookcase of family photos and memorabilia used to stand. Where's the bookcase? I asked, looking around. In the garage, Waldo answered, fiddling with the wires. It was just taking up space, and a system needs proper acoustics. You threw our family stuff in the garage without asking me? I didn't throw it out. I rearranged it. He didn't even look up. Relax, Eustace. It's all intact. I walked silently into the garage. The closet had been pushed into a corner. A few shelves dismantled, books piled in boxes. The photo albums Martha had so carefully collected over the years were lying around, some open and crumpled. I shook with rage. I went back into the house trying to calm down, but I couldn't help myself. You had no right to touch those things, I said, standing in front of Waldo. These aren't just old books. They're our family history. Come on, he stood up, towering over me. Waldo was half a head taller. Who keeps paper pictures anymore? Everything can be digitized. It's not about format, it's about respect. You didn't even ask, I asked Cassie. She didn't mind, he shrugged. Isn't that enough? No, it's not. This is my house, and Here we go again. He rolled his eyes theatrically. My house, my rules. You know, Eustace, you're too obsessed with property. And you're too used to using other people's without asking permission, I countered. Cassidy walked in at that moment, and Waldo's tone changed instantly. Cassidy, honey, your father's upset about the closet. I told you we should have discussed it with him first. Manipulative. I saw right through him, but Cassidy was looking at him with loving eyes. Dad, it's just an old closet, she said, conciliatory. We put everything neatly in boxes. The closet your mother picked out, with pictures of our family. They're not missing. Just move to the garage. She came over and touched my shoulder. I understand that you cherish your memories, but we need space to live. Don't I? I pulled away. You're slowly pushing me out of every corner of the house. First, the backyard became your friend's party space. Then the kitchen became a bar. Now the living room is a concert hall. You're exaggerating, she sighed. It's just speakers. Huge speakers that must have cost several $100s, I said. And yet you say you can't pay your share of the utilities. It was a gift, Waldo said quickly, from the guys in the band, for our anniversary. I knew he was lying. There must be new debt on their credit card. And how often do you plan to use this system? I asked, already knowing the answer. Well, we were thinking of having a little party on Saturday, Cassidy began. Our wedding anniversary, remember? Another party, I shook my head. Of course, if it bothers you that much, you can spend the weekend at your buddy Harry's house, Waldo suggested with fake concern. Keep the noise down. You're kicking me out of my own house? No one's kicking you out. Cassidy was beginning to lose patience. We're just offering to make everyone comfortable. You know what would be really comfortable? I looked at both of them. If you treated this house and me with respect. Waldo put his arm around Cassidy's shoulders. Cassidy, I told you, he'll never accept our way of life. To him, we'll always be irresponsible children. Don't use my daughter as a shield, I stepped toward him. Have the courage to speak for yourself. Dad, Cassidy stepped between us. Stop attacking Waldo. He's my husband, and I won't let you talk to him like that. How am I supposed to talk to a man who's systematically turning you against me? I couldn't help myself. Who turns my house into a playground for his drunken buddies? Who spends your money on his useless toys? Enough! She raised her voice. I won't let you insult him. If you can't accept our life, maybe we really should move out. Maybe we should, I agreed. At least you'd be living within your means and not at my expense. Waldo grinned. That's the truth. You just don't want to support us. You know, Eustace, for a father, you're remarkably selfish. Selfish? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I gave everything I had to my family, worked 2 jobs to buy this house, paid for Cassidy's education, offered to help you with a down payment on your own place. And I'm selfish. Yes, Cassidy suddenly shouted, because everything you do on your own terms. You only help if we live the way you think is right. It's called responsibility, I said. Yes, I will not sponsor your self-destructive lifestyle. See? Waldo turned to Cassidy. He thinks of us as children to be controlled. That's not what I said, I objected. I said, we know what you said, Cassidy interrupted. The same thing you've been saying for the last few months. We're irresponsible, we spend too much, we make too much noise, we don't live right. Because it's true, I raised my voice. Look at you. You're in your 30s and you're living like teenagers. Endless parties, spontaneous shopping, no planning. And you live like the living dead, she shouted, and I froze in shock. Ever since Mom died, you've existed by inertia. The same routines, the same conversations, the same recriminations. You're not living, you're surviving. I felt the blood rush from my face. Cassidy had never spoken to me so cruelly. It's not true, I said quietly. I live my life to the fullest. I have friends, hobbies. What friends? She grinned bitterly. A few of the same pensioners with whom you go fishing once a week. That's great. Cassie, Waldo stroked her back as if to encourage her. Don't be so upset. Your father just doesn't understand modern life. You stay out of this. I couldn't take it anymore. You poison my daughter's mind with your ideas about freedom and living in the moment. And in fact, you're just parasitizing her and me. Waldo's face contorted with anger, but he quickly pulled himself together and feigned a look of hurt innocence. You see, Cassie, he'll never accept me. I'm never good enough for him. You're right, she hugged him. He'll never change. I don't want to change, I said firmly. I believe in my principles: honesty, responsibility, respect for others. And I see that in your modern life, there's no room for that. You know what? Cassidy turned toward me, her eyes glistening with tears of rage. We're tired of your lecturing. We're adults and we're going to live our lives as we see fit. And if you don't like it, then what? I crossed my arms over my chest. Then maybe it's you who should move out, not us. I stared at her in amazement. You're suggesting I leave my own house? Yes, she couldn't hold back. Because you've made our life a living hell. Constant control, criticism, reproach. We can't even listen to music without you nagging us. This house belongs to me, I reminded you, legally and morally. Mom would want it to be our house, Cassidy screamed. She would never approve of the way you're treating us. The mention of Martha was the last straw. I felt something inside me snap. Don't you dare use your mother's memory, my voice was muffled. She would never approve of what you've become. There was dead silence. Cassidy stared at me wide-eyed as if I'd hit her. Then her face contorted with rage. Get out, she shouted, pointing at the door. You're a burden on our house. Get out. I stood there, unable to believe my ears. My daughter, my little Cassie, was kicking me out of the house I had built for our family. Cassie, you don't know what you're saying. I tried to take her hand, but she pulled away. I know exactly what you're saying. You won't let us live. You control our every move. You despise Waldo and everything that matters to us. That's not true. I shook my head. I just want to... We don't care what you want. She was already hysterical. We want to be free of your perpetual discontent. Go away. Get out now. Waldo stood beside her with a smug smile, not trying to stop his wife. On the contrary, he seemed to be enjoying himself. You'd better go, Eustace, he said in a falsely peaceful tone. Cassie needs to calm down, and your presence is only making things worse. I looked at them both and saw that I'd lost. Not the argument. I'd lost my daughter to this manipulator. She couldn't hear me anymore, didn't want to hear me. Okay, I finally nodded. I'll leave. You will? Cassidy looked surprised, as if she hadn't expected me to give in. Yes, but remember, this is my home, and I'll be back when I feel like it. I went up to my room and started packing. My hands were shaking, and my throat was lumpy. How had we gotten to this point? When did my little girl turn into this strange, evil woman? I gathered the essentials: clothes, documents, medicine, a picture of Martha. The rest could wait. When I went downstairs, I saw that Cassidy and Waldo had already turned on the music and opened the wine, as if celebrating a victory. I'm leaving, I said, stopping in the doorway of the living room. But we'll talk again when you're in a more reasonable state of mind. Cassidy didn't even look at me, sipping her wine defiantly. Waldo waved his hand. Have a safe trip, Eustace. Don't worry, we'll keep an eye on the house. I walked out, closing the door behind me. The evening air of Miles City was cool, smelling of an approaching thunderstorm. Loading my bags into the trunk, I sat behind the wheel and just stared at the house that was no longer my home. What did I do wrong, Martha? I mentally asked. Where did I go wrong with our daughter? There was no answer. I started the car and drove away, not yet knowing where I was going, but knowing one thing for sure. There was no turning back. Something had irrevocably broken today, and I wasn't sure it could be repaired. Finding a place to stay in Miles City wasn't as easy as I'd thought it would be. I spent the first 2 nights at the Blue Pine Motel on the outskirts of town, a dreary one-story building with cracked plaster and hard beds. The room smelled of old cigarettes despite the "no smoking" sign. At night I lay awake, remembering Cassidy's cry, "You're a burden on our house. Go away." Her face, contorted with rage, stood before my eyes, preventing me from sleeping. On the third day I found a small apartment on the second floor of an old house on Ryabinova Street. 1 bedroom, a living room with a kitchen and a tiny balcony overlooking the park. The landlady, Mrs. Finch, a stocky woman with close-cropped gray hair, examined my papers meticulously. "Separated from your wife?" she asked, looking over my application. "I was widowed 5 years ago," I replied. "I was living with my daughter, but we needed space from each other." She nodded, not asking for details. "The rules are simple. No parties. Quiet after 10 p.m. No pets bigger than a hamster. Rent is the first of every month. No late fees." I signed the contract and paid the first month's rent and deposit. The apartment was partially furnished. A bed, an old couch, a dining table with chairs, basic kitchen utensils. Enough to get started. The first days in the new dwelling passed in a daze. I mechanically unpacked, cooked simple meals, watched TV without remembering what was on. My thoughts kept returning to the house, to Cassidy. Several times I picked up the phone to call her, but stopped myself. What would I say? She'd made it clear she didn't want to see me. Instead, I went back to my habits. Early rising, exercise, long walks. My body moved on inertia while my mind tried to comprehend what had happened. On the 5th day of my exile, Harold Reeves, my longtime fishing club buddy, called. "Eustace, buddy, where'd you disappear to? We were expecting you at the meeting on Thursday." I briefly explained the situation, leaving out the emotional details. "Cassie kicked you out?" Harold didn't hide his surprise. "From your own home?" "Technically, I left on my own," I sighed. "The situation. Complicated." "Nonsense. It's your house, damn it. You can't let them treat you like this." "I need time, Harry, to think about what to do next." He paused for a moment, then said more gently, "Listen, come over for dinner. Eleanor would love to see you, and you shouldn't be alone." I agreed, though I wanted more of the quiet of my new apartment. Dinner at the Reeves was better than I expected. Eleanor, Harold's wife, fed me a home-cooked meal that reminded me of Martha's cooking, and then tactfully left Harry and me in the living room with 2 glasses of whiskey. "Tell me." Harold settled into the chair across from me. "What really happened?" I told him everything. How Cassidy had changed after the wedding. How Waldo had gradually turned her against me. How I'd tried to talk to her but only made things worse. She screamed that I was a burden. My voice shook. "My own daughter, Harry." He shook his head. "That Waldo is a real parasite, manipulating your girl to get to your money and your house." "Maybe." I chugged the whiskey in my glass. "But Cassie's a grown woman. She makes her own choices." "Bad choices," Harold muttered. "So what now? Are you just going to live in a rented apartment while they destroy your house?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Legally, I could evict them, but that would only exacerbate the rift with my daughter." "And now what? Honeymoon?" Harold snorted. "Eustace, sometimes you have to be tougher. Your Cassie's spoiled. Maybe it's the shake-up she needs." I didn't answer. Maybe he was right, but the thought of legally evicting my own daughter seemed monstrous. After dinner at the Reeves, I started leaving the house more often. I resumed my visits to the fishing club, started going to the local library, and found a small cafe not far from the apartment where retired people like me gathered in the mornings. On one of those mornings, sitting at a cup of coffee, I overheard a conversation at a neighboring table. "The jackpot has grown to 700,000, said an elderly man with a cane. "Can you imagine? Buying a house, traveling around the world, It's a 1 in a million chance, Eddie, the man said skeptically. You're more likely to get struck by lightning. My brother-in-law won 20,000 last year, the first man objected. Bought a new pickup truck, sent his granddaughter to a good college. Sometimes you get lucky, Lou. I smiled as I listened to their bickering. Martha and I bought lottery tickets sometimes, too, not seriously hoping to win, but more as a little ritual. Every Friday on my way home from work, I would stop by Mr. Howie's store and buy one ticket. In the evening, Martha and I would dream about how we would spend our winnings, fixing up the house, going to Europe, paying for Cassidy's education. In the morning, we would find out that we hadn't won even $1, laugh, and go on with our lives. After Martha died, I stopped that tradition. It seemed wrong to dream of winning without her. As I left the cafe, I noticed a small store on the corner. Johnson's Groceries and Lottery. I paused for a second, looking at the brightly colored poster in the window. Lucky 7 jackpot, $700,000. Almost without thinking, he went inside. "One Lucky 7 ticket, please," I said to the full-figured woman behind the counter. $20. She held out her hand. "The drawing is tomorrow night. Good luck." I paid and tucked the ticket away in my wallet, feeling oddly like Martha was smiling at me from somewhere above. The next day, I almost forgot about the lottery ticket. In the morning, I went fishing with Harold and 2 other buddies, then stopped at the hardware store to get some tools to fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom. Mrs. Finch appreciated my initiative and hinted that if I did some minor repairs, she might be able to reduce the rent. In the evening, while sorting through my purchases, I came across a ticket in my jacket pocket. The draw was due to start in half an hour. I turned on the TV, not really hoping to win, but feeling some sentimental connection to the past. The draw was conducted by a young woman in a sequin dress with a wide smile on her painted lips. She chatted with the host about the luck of buying tickets, then got to the main point. "There's a $700,000 jackpot tonight," she announced. "The winning combination will determine the lucky winner who will take home the entire amount." The reels of balls started spinning. I lazily marked the numbers on my ticket, not expecting anything special. The first number was 9. Check. Number 2, 22. Check. Number 3, 41. Check. 4th, 17. Got it. 5, 38. I got this one. 6, 54. It's a match. I straightened up in my chair, unable to believe my eyes. All 6 numbers on my ticket matched the winning numbers. I double-checked 3 times, then went to the kitchen, drank a glass of water, came back and checked the numbers again. No doubt about it. I hit the jackpot. $700,000, a life-changing sum. My first impulse was to call Cassidy, to share my joy, to tell her that now I could help her with the down payment on the house, that we could start over. But then I remembered her screaming, "You're a burden." I remembered Waldo's smug smirk. And I put the phone down. No calls, no attempt at a relationship. They'd made it clear they didn't want me. So be it. I barely slept that night. My thoughts were jumping from planning how to spend the money to worrying about the safety of such a sum. I called the lottery company first thing in the morning, confirmed my winnings, and received instructions on how to collect it. It turned out that the jackpot was not $700,000, but $670,000 after taxes and fees were deducted. Still, a huge amount of money for someone like me who was used to saving every dollar. "Congratulations, Mr. Belcher," the girl at the lottery company chirped. "You're our first big winner this year. Would you prefer to receive the entire amount all at once or in annual installments?" I opted for the lump sum. At my age, annual payments seemed like a risky strategy. "Good choice." She sounded like I had just made the wisest decision in the history of mankind. "We'll need a few days to complete the paperwork. We also want to warn you that the winners will be publicized on our website and in the local media. Do you mind?" I hesitated. The thought of publicity didn't make me happy, but it seemed to be a condition of winning. No, I don't mind, I finally answered. Great. Then we are waiting for you in our office on Thursday at 10 in the morning for the official ceremony of handing over the check. After the conversation, I sat in the silence of my small apartment, trying to realize what had happened. $670,000. I could buy a new house without touching my retirement savings. I could have traveled, upgraded my car, helped charities. I could start a new life. One thing I certainly wasn't going to do was use that money to regain favor with my daughter and son-in-law. Let them get away with their hypocrisy and greed. I decided not to tell anyone about the winnings until after the ceremony. Not even Harold, who would probably give me advice on what to do with the money. I needed time to think it over for myself. Thursday morning, I put on my only decent suit, the one I'd buried Martha in, and went to the lottery company's office. The ceremony was surprisingly modest. A few company representatives, a photographer from the local newspaper, a huge cardboard check, and a bottle of champagne that was opened for a few photos and then put away. "Mr. Belcher, what do you plan to do with your winnings?" asked the reporter while the photographer clicked his camera. "I haven't decided yet," I answered honestly. "Probably a new house, travel." "Will you share it with your family?" The question caught me off guard. I hesitated, then said, "My wife died 5 years ago. There are no other plans yet." The reporter nodded, clearly disappointed by such a boring answer, and switched to asking the lottery representative questions. After the ceremony, I received the actual check and instructions to open a special bank account. By evening, the money was transferred, and I was the official owner of a sum greater than anything I had earned in 30 years of working life. The announcement of my winnings appeared on the evening news. A short story, me standing there with a cardboard check, smiling awkwardly at the camera, followed by a couple of general words about a retired man down on his luck. The phone rang 20 minutes after the story aired. "Dad?" Cassidy's voice sounded unsure. "Is it true? You won the lottery?" I immediately realized how she knew. The neighbors must have seen the news and told her. "Yes," I answered dryly. "I won." A pause. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. That's amazing." She tried to feign enthusiasm. "I'm so happy for you. Why didn't you call me right away?" "Why didn't you?" I asked calmly. "You made it clear that I was a burden to get rid of." "Dad, I didn't mean that." Her voice became pleading. "I was angry. I said something I shouldn't have said. You know I love you." "Do I?" I sighed. The last few months had made me doubt it. "Please," she sobbed. "Let's meet. Let's talk." "Waldo and I were so worried about you. Didn't know where you were living, if you were okay. But not worried enough to call until tonight," I pointed out. "We thought you'd be mad, wouldn't want to talk." She was clearly losing her temper. "Dad, please. We're a family. Families fight, but then they make up." "Not this time," I cut her off. "You kicked me out when you didn't need me, and now that you've got money, you're suddenly thinking about family ties?" "No, Cassidy, that's not how it works." "What does money have to do with it?" She raised her voice. "I'm calling because I miss my father. It's a strange coincidence that you missed him today." I couldn't help my sarcasm. 20 minutes after the news of the win. "You're unfair." She sounded hurt now. "I was going to call earlier, just what?" I interrupted. Was I too busy partying, or too embarrassed to admit that I'd kicked my own father out of his house? She fell silent, clearly unprepared for such a rebuff. "Dad, I'm really sorry. Waldo and I are both sorry. We want you to come home." "It's not my home anymore," I said firmly. "And don't call me again. I'll contact you when I'm ready." I hung up, feeling a strange mixture of pain and release. For the first time, I hadn't relented, hadn't tried to smooth things over, hadn't allowed myself to be manipulated to keep the peace. The phone rang again a minute later. Waldo's number. I dropped the call. Then he called again, and again. By midnight, I counted 15 missed calls from him and 12 from Cassidy. They alternated as if they were sitting next to each other and handing the phone to each other. The next day, the calls continued. I muted the sound and got down to business. I had to manage my winnings, think about the future. Toward evening came a message from Cassidy. "Dad, please pick up. We're really worried. Just let us know you're okay." I almost laughed. 2 weeks of my absence hadn't bothered them, and now all of a sudden they were very worried. I didn't bother answering. In the evening, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, I saw Cassidy and Waldo standing on the threshold with guilty smiles. "How did you find me?" I asked without inviting them in. "We asked the neighbors," Cassidy replied. "An old lady saw you come in here with your bags. Dad, can I come in? We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about," I stood in the doorway. "You made your point pretty clear 2 weeks ago." "We were wrong," Waldo said with fake remorse. "What we did, it's unforgivable. But we want to make things right." "How?" I crossed my arms over my chest. "We want you to come home," Cassidy stepped forward. "You belong with us, with your family." "I don't consider you my family anymore," I replied flatly. "Family doesn't throw a man out on the street and then not call for 2 weeks. A family doesn't think of its members only when money comes in." "What does money have to do with it?" Cassidy splashed his hands. "I just want my father back." "Enough hypocrisy," I shook my head. "We all know why you're here. You think you can convince me to come back and get access to my winnings. But that's not going to happen." Waldo's face contorted with anger for a moment, but he quickly pulled himself together. "Eustace, that's not true. We just want to make things right. I understand your resentment, but—" "No, you don't," I interrupted. "And you never will. Now please leave. I'm tired." "Dad, you can't just give up on us." Cassidy grabbed my hand. "We're your only family." "You gave up on me the moment you called me a burden." I gently but firmly released my hand. "And no, you're not my only family. I have friends who have shown more care in these 2 weeks than you have in the last year." "Is this a final decision?" Waldo asked, and I could see the anger in his eyes. "Yes," I nodded. "It's final." "You're going to regret this," he muttered, turning around. "Waldo!" Cassidy gave him a warning glance, then turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Dad, please, give us a chance. We can fix this." "No, Cassidy," I shook my head. "Some things can't be fixed. Goodbye." I closed the door without waiting for her answer. Through the window, I watched them argue outside, Waldo gesticulating furiously and Cassidy wiping away tears. Then they got in the car and drove away. The next day, the calls resumed. I continued to ignore them, focusing on planning for the future. By the end of the day, I decided to change my phone number. I was tired of getting dropped calls all the time. The bank advised me to invest part of my winnings to ensure a stable income. I agreed and distributed the money between conservative and moderate risk investments. I also set aside a sum to buy a new house, not in Miles City, but maybe somewhere by the lake, as Martha and I had always dreamed. That evening, on my way back from the bank, I noticed a familiar car parked in front of my house. Waldo was sitting behind the wheel, looking out the driveway. When he saw me, he got out of the car. "We need to talk," he said, blocking my way. "I don't have anything to say to you." I tried to get around him. "But I do." He grabbed my shoulder. "You're breaking Cassie's heart with your stubbornness. She won't sleep. She cries all the time. Is that what you want?" "Waldo," I calmly removed his hand. "We both know you're not worried about Cassidy's emotional state, but about my money. So let's cut the act." His face reddened with anger. "You think you're so smart, that you understand everything." He leaned in closer. "You know what I know? That you never really loved Cassie. You loved controlling her, but as soon as she started living her own life, you turned away." "You don't believe that yourself." I shook my head. "Cassidy doesn't believe it either. You both know the truth. The truth is that you're a selfish old man who chose money over his own daughter," he almost shouted. What are you going to tell your fishing buddies? That you traded your family for your winnings? I'll tell them the truth, I replied. That my daughter and her husband kicked me out of the house when they didn't need me, and then came begging when they found out about the money. And you know what? They'll understand, because they're real friends, not parasites living off other people's money. Waldo clenched his fists, and for a second I thought he was going to hit me, but instead he spat out, "You're going to regret this, Eustace. You're going to regret it." He turned around, got in his car, and drove off with a squeal of tires. The third day after the news of my winning spread, I changed my phone number. I couldn't take the endless calls from Cassidy and Waldo. 56 calls in 48 hours was beyond reasonable, especially when every conversation boiled down to the same thing: fake apologies, attempts at sympathy, and at the end barely concealed irritation when I didn't give in to the manipulation. I gave the new number only to Harold, Mrs. Finch, and my bank consultant. Harold was sworn to secrecy, and Mrs. Finch was strictly warned not to give my contacts to any relatives. She nodded understandingly, apparently having seen a lot of family drama in her life as a landlady. There was a strange lull of 3 days. I began to get used to my new life, to look for a permanent place to live, to meet my friends from the fishing club. At times I caught myself thinking that for the first time in many years I felt free. No scandals, no tension, no feeling that I was an extra in my own house. On the 4th day of silence, Cassidy spotted me outside the grocery store. I was just leaving with my bags when she jumped out of a nearby parked car. "Dad!" She stepped in front of me. "I finally found you." I stopped, looking at my daughter. She looked ragged, with circles under her eyes, in sloppy clothes. Not at all like the well-groomed Cassidy who usually spent an hour putting on makeup before leaving the house. "Cassidy," I nodded curtly. "What do you want?" "To talk," she made pleading eyes. "You've changed your number. You're not responding to social media messages. I was worried." "That's weird," I remarked. 2 weeks after you kicked me out of the house, you weren't worried at all." She wrinkled her nose as if in pain. "I know I deserved it. But Dad, I'm really sorry. I've been a terrible daughter." I sighed, grabbing the bags more comfortably. "Cassie, I don't want to have this conversation in the middle of the parking lot. I'm not sure I want to talk at all. Please," she touched my sleeve. "Just 5 minutes. Can I just help you carry the groceries home?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to just walk away, but the other part of me, the part that still remembered little Cassie with pigtails running toward me after work, couldn't quite turn away. 5 minutes, I finally agreed. "But I'm not inviting you into the apartment." She readily took one bag from me, and we walked toward the house. Cassidy talked non-stop the whole way about how much she missed me, how the house was empty without me, how she'd re-evaluated her outlook on life. "Waldo and I talked a lot about what happened," she said when we reached the porch. "He's very sorry, too. We both realize what a terrible thing we did." "Uh-huh." I set the bag on the ground and pulled out my keys. "And when did that realization come? Before or after the news of the win?" She flared up, but quickly pulled herself together. "Dad, I understand your suspicions, but I swear it's not about the money. I just want my dad back." "I'm sorry, Cassie, but I don't believe that." I took the second bag from her. "Your 5 minutes are up." "But," she blinked, clearly not expecting this rebuff, "you didn't even listen to me all the way through." "I've heard enough. And you know what I hear? Hypocrisy. You called me a burden. You said I was interfering with your life, that I was living out my life, not living. And now, all of a sudden, I'm a dear daddy, without whom the house is empty?" I shook my head. "I'm sorry, but I'm too old for such a drastic change in attitude." Her face contorted with resentment. "You're not going to give me a chance at all? Not even going to try to forgive me?" "It's not about forgiveness," I sighed. "It's about trust. I don't trust you or Waldo anymore, and nothing I say is going to change that." "What will?" She grabbed my arm. "Tell me, What do I have to do to make you trust me? Nothing. I released her hand gently. Just walk away, Cassie. Live your life. I'll live mine. Her eyes filled with tears, but I noticed they didn't flow, as if she held them at the ready but couldn't really squeeze them out. You're cruel, she whispered. I never thought you could turn your back on your own daughter like that. You turned your back on me, I reminded her. I just accepted your decision. I walked into the entryway without looking back. I let myself exhale as I went upstairs and closed the door. My heart was pounding like I'd run a mile. An unpleasant conversation, but perhaps a necessary one. The next day, I found a basket of fruit and a bottle of expensive whiskey, my favorite kind, on the doorstep of the apartment. The note read, Dad, I still remember your favorite. Please give me a call, Cassie. I took the basket to the residence lounge on the first floor. The fruit sold out in half an hour. The whiskey was taken by Mr. Jenkins from the third floor, who was suffering from arthritis. Cheers, Belcher, he trumpeted, hiding the bottle in a bag. 2 days later, a postcard arrived, an old picture of Cassidy and me fishing when she was about 12. On the back were touching words about how much she missed the times when we were a family and how she wanted to make things right. I put the card in my desk drawer and tried not to think about her. Then came the bouquet, a huge, lush bouquet with a note from Waldo. Eustace, I was wrong. Let's make a fresh start. Waldo. The bouquet went to Mrs. Parker, a neighbor who had recently undergone an operation. She was delighted. What a lovely daughter you have, Mr. Belcher. I didn't dissuade her. Harold kept me informed of what was going on in town. According to him, Cassidy and Waldo were telling everyone that I was suffering from age-related depression, so I refused to socialize with my family. They make you out to be a senile old man, Harold snorted as we played chess in the park. They say you can't manage your money and need their care. Let them talk, I shrugged, moving my rook. People who know me won't believe such nonsense. Aren't you afraid they'll try to challenge your legal capacity in court? Harold lowered his voice. It happens, you know, especially when there's a lot of money involved. I wondered. It wasn't an option I'd considered, but it sounded plausible. Thanks for the warning, I said, making a mental note to consult a lawyer. Check, by the way. A week after the basket story, Cassidy changed tactics. She sent me an official letter through a notary apologies, assurances of love, and an offer to sign a deed of gift of our family home in her name as a gesture of goodwill and restoration of the relationship. I laughed reading that letter. It looked like Waldo had finally shown his true colors and decided to act directly. A gesture of goodwill, my ass. Why don't they go? I sent my answer through the same notary, a short no on official letterhead. That was the end of the negotiation. 3 days later, on my way back from fishing, Waldo was waiting for me in the driveway, alone, without Cassidy. We need to talk, he said without preamble. There's nothing to talk about, I tried to sidestep him. Yes, there is, he said, blocking the way. I came to apologize. Man to man. I glared at him. Waldo looked unusually serious without his usual smirk. Okay. I nodded at a nearby bench. 5 minutes. We sat down. Waldo was silent for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Then he began, I've been terrible to you, Eustace. All this time I've been acting like a spoiled teenager instead of a grown man. You were right about my irresponsibility, my attitude toward money, my influence on Cassie. I listened in silence, marveling at his artistry. If I didn't know him better, I might almost believe it. And when you left, I finally realized what I'd done, he continued, looking me in the eye with perfectly rehearsed sincerity. You were like a father to Cassie, and I ruined that. And now she's suffering. Cries every day, hardly eats, doesn't sleep. Waldo, I interrupted him, why all the drama? We both know you're here for the money. He staggered for a moment, then tried to play innocent. What cynicism, Eustace? I came with an open heart, and you... Enough. I raised my hand. I know you well enough. You've never admitted your mistakes in your life, and you certainly wouldn't apologize if there wasn't something at stake. He was silent for a moment. Then suddenly, he grinned. You're not so simple, old man. His voice changed, hardening. All right, let me get this straight. Yeah, I need your money. Cassie and I do. We're in debt. The house is in need of repairs, and you're sitting on a pile of cash, playing hurt. I'm not playing hurt, I said calmly. I'm really hurt and disappointed, especially with Cassidy. What did you expect? He waved his hands in the air. That she'd live by your rules forever, pleasing her daddy to get your approval? She's grown up, Eustace. She's entitled to her own life. Of course she does, I agreed, and the consequences of her choices too. His face contorted with anger. So that's it? You're just giving up on your daughter because she didn't live up to your expectations? No, Waldo. I'm giving up on a relationship based on manipulation and self-interest. There's a difference. Self-interest? He chuckled. What about you? Using money to control Cassie, to make her crawl on her knees in front of you. I'm not making anyone crawl, I shook my head. You're the one who decided that money was worth the humiliation. You know what? He leaned closer, lowering his voice. You're going to regret it. We're going to get our share whether you want it or not. Is that a threat? I looked him straight in the eye. It's a promise. He stood up. You have a week to come to your senses and call Cassie. Otherwise, we'll go the other way. He walked away, leaving me sitting on the bench. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart, not out of fear, but out of frustration. Had my daughter really committed her life to this man? Did she really approve of his methods? The next day, I visited the lawyer. Mr. Abbott, an elderly man with attentive eyes behind thick glasses, listened to my story and shook his head. Unfortunately, these situations are not uncommon, Mr. Belcher, especially when unexpected wealth is involved. What can they do? I asked. My friend had mentioned the possibility of challenging my legal capacity. Theoretically, yes, Mr. Abbott nodded, but to do that, they would need solid evidence of your incapacity, medical reports, testimony of strange behavior, evidence of dementia. From what we've spoken to you, you seem to be thinking clearly. I'd say so, I smiled. However, I would recommend a full medical examination, he continued, to document your state of health, including your mental health. That will close the way for them to manipulate your capacity. I followed his advice and had a full examination the following week. The doctors found nothing more serious than the usual age-related changes and minor arthritis. I received the report of full capacity and sent a copy to Mr. Abbott. He also advised me to make a new will, clearly stating what would go to whom and to what upon my death. I left only our family home to Cassidy, with the stipulation that she could not sell or mortgage it for 10 years after my death. I distributed the rest of the property and funds to charitable organizations and a few friends, including Harold. This may seem cruel, I said to Mr. Abbott as I signed the documents, to disinherit your daughter. You're not disinheriting her, he objected. The house is a substantial part of your estate, but you're protecting her from potential ruin. If this Waldo is as you describe, he'd be out the money in a year. Probably, I agreed, but Cassie will still think I'm cruel. That's your right, Mr. Belcher, he shrugged, to dispose of your property as you see fit. After the visit to the lawyer, I was relieved. At least, technically, everything was protected. 2 days later, Cassidy and Waldo both showed up on my doorstep. This time they didn't try to act remorseful. Their faces were determined, almost aggressive. Dad, we need to have a serious talk, Cassidy said when I opened the door. Come in. I stepped back, letting them in. There was no avoiding the conversation, so it was better to have it in front of witnesses. The neighbors would probably hear if there was an uproar. They sat down on the couch and I settled into the chair across from them. Waldo and I have been thinking a lot, Cassidy began. We've come to the conclusion that you're not coming home, haven't we? That's right, I nodded. And you're not going to share your winnings? That's right, too. She took a deep breath as if gathering her strength. Good. Then we want to buy the house from you. I raised my eyebrows. Really? Yes, Waldo stepped in. At market value. No tricks, a fair deal. Where'd you get the money? I asked. As I recall, you're in debt. We'll take out a mortgage, Cassidy said. We've already talked to the bank and they've approved the loan. I was silent for a moment, thinking about the situation. Their proposal had taken me by surprise. I expected more manipulation, tears, maybe even threats, but not a business proposal. Why would you do that? I finally asked. It's a big house, and it's expensive to run. You were struggling when I was paying most of it. We've changed. Cassidy straightened her back. Waldo got a new job. I got a promotion. We'll get by. I looked at Waldo. His face was impenetrable, but there was impatience in his eyes. A new job? I asked him again. Where? Bridger & Sons Construction Company, he answered. Sales manager. That's right, I nodded. And when did that happen? 2 weeks ago. He shivered slightly under my gaze. I see, I turned back to Cassidy. And your promotion? A month ago, she lowered her eyes. I didn't tell you because, well, we haven't been on good terms lately. I leaned back in my chair, studying their faces. Something wasn't adding up here. Sudden career success, sudden desire to buy a house. Why do you want this particular house? I asked. You could buy something smaller, newer, less expensive to maintain. Because it's our house, Cassidy exclaimed. It's where my memories are, my childhood. I grew up in this house. And you kicked me out of it, I reminded her. Called me a burden. I've apologized for that 1,000 times. She threw up her hands. What more do you want me to say? It's not about apologizing, Cassie. I shook my head. It's that I don't believe you. I don't believe in Waldo's new job. I don't believe in your sudden financial prosperity. I don't believe in the sincerity of your desire to buy a house. Why are you so suspicious? Waldo stepped forward. We're offering a fair deal. You get the money, we get the house. Everybody wins. Except you won't be able to afford a mortgage on a house of this value, I pointed out. Even with your new income. That's not what the bank says, Waldo countered. We're pre-approved. Preliminary, I nodded. Based on the information you provided. What happens at full inspection? They looked at each other, and I realized I'd hit the mark. What's your real plan? I asked bluntly. Why do you want the house? Cassidy opened her mouth, but Waldo beat her to it. Okay, you got us. We want to sell the house and move to Portland. There are more opportunities for my music career there. Waldo? Cassidy looked at him with horror. We had a deal. To hell with it. He jumped up, his face contorted with anger. Stop beating around the bush. Your father won't believe us anyway. He turned to me. Yes, we want to sell the house. Yes, we want some of your money. So what? That's fair. You want a fortune and you don't want to help your own daughter? I offered to help, I reminded him. Many times, but you wanted to live free, without obligations. What's changed? Everything has changed, he screamed. We finally got a chance to start a new life, and you're holding on to your money like a responsible person, I said. Like a man who doesn't want his daughter and son-in-law to blow a year's worth of music career and partying. Dad, Cassidy stood next to her husband. We're not asking for that much. Just help us start over. No debt, no problems. As I recall, I looked her in the eye. The last time I offered to help with the condition of responsible money, you called me a controlling tyrant who won't let you live. I was wrong, she whispered. I admit it. And I think you were exactly right, I countered. You really don't want anyone to control your life. You and Waldo want freedom from responsibility, and my money won't give you that. So your answer is no? Waldo clenched his fists. You're not going to sell us the house? My answer is no, I confirmed. I'm not selling you the house, and I'm not giving you any money. Ever. You'll regret it, Waldo hissed. I swear you'll regret it. Waldo, come on. Cassidy put her hand on his shoulder, then turned to me. Dad, I understand your decision, but I want you to know that I'm still your daughter, and I still love you no matter what. If you really loved me, Cassie, I stood up, you wouldn't have let that man turn you into what you've become, and you wouldn't have tried to manipulate me for money. I'm not manipulating, she flailed her arms. I'm just asking for help, which you never would have accepted if you hadn't won, I pointed out. It's too late, Cassie. Too many lies, too much betrayal. I'm not going back to you, and I'm not sharing the money. This is my final decision. Waldo grabbed Cassidy's arm and pulled her toward the door. Let's get out of here. This old man is not worth our efforts. Waldo! She tried to free herself, but he held her tight. I said, let's go. He practically dragged her out of the apartment. I heard them arguing on the stairs, muffled voices, full of anger and frustration. Then the front door slammed and there was silence. A week after Cassidy and Waldo's last visit, I sold the family home. Not to them, of course. To a young Carson family with 2 kids and a golden retriever. They fell in love with the house at first sight, especially the big backyard with the oak tree where I once hung a swing for little Cassidy. A tree house would look great here, Mr. Carson said, looking up at the sturdy branches. I've always wanted to build one for my boys. I smiled, imagining children's laughter in the garden where my daughter had once laughed. I hadn't told Cassidy and Waldo about the sale. They found out after the fact when they arrived at the house and discovered the new tenants. Harold told me that Cassidy had thrown a tantrum on the lawn, screaming that I had betrayed her, that it was her house, her inheritance. I almost felt sorry for her, Harold said when we met for lunch. But she dug that hole for herself. I agreed. I nodded, though my heart felt heavy. I divided the proceeds of the sale into 3 parts. I invested one of them in safe bonds to ensure a steady income. The second part I put aside for the purchase of a new home. And the third I decided to spend on something Martha and I had dreamed of all our lives, a trip around the world. Around the world? Harold whistled when I shared my plans. At your age? What's the big deal? I grinned. I'm 64, not 94. I can walk. I can think straight. When, if not now? That makes sense, he clapped me on the shoulder. How long have you and Martha been dreaming about this? Since our honeymoon, I smiled at the memory. We'd gone to Lake Michigan then, sat on the shore, and planned how one day we'd see all the wonders of the world. The Grand Canyon, the pyramids, the Eiffel Tower, the Taj Mahal. Then let's go. Harold lifted his coffee cup. To the fulfillment of dreams. I started with a visit to the travel agency. The young girl at the computer raised her eyebrows in surprise when I outlined my wishes. A trip around the world? Alone? She looked worried. It could be tedious and potentially dangerous at your age, Mr. Belcher. First of all, I'm in great shape, I assured her. Second, I'm not climbing Everest or shark diving. I just want to see the world while I can. She nodded, still hesitant, but began to map out an itinerary. We decided to break the trip into several legs with return trips home for rest. I chose Europe as the first destination, London, Paris, Rome, Barcelona. Then, after a short rest at home, I planned Asia, Japan, China, India. Third, Australia and New Zealand. Fourth, South America. It will take almost a year if you take into account the breaks between trips, the girl said, looking at the plan. I have time, I smiled. And you need money to fulfill your dreams, right? Before I left, I bought a new apartment. Not too big, but bright and comfortable, in a good neighborhood overlooking the park. 2 bedrooms, spacious living room, modern kitchen, large balcony. No extra rooms that need to be heated and cleaned. No empty spaces to remind you of the absence of loved ones. Harold helped with the move, and his wife Eleanor organized a housewarming party, inviting a few friends from the fishing club. We sat on the new terrace, drank wine, and talked about our upcoming travels. "You should start a blog," suggested Teddy Monroe, the youngest of our group. He was only 58. "Post pictures. Write about your experiences." "A blog?" I laughed. "At my age? What's the big deal?" Teddy shrugged. "My mother-in-law runs an Instagram. She's 72. Very popular, by the way. The idea seemed fun, so I agreed to give it a try. Teddy helped set up the site, taught me how to upload photos and write notes. We called the blog simply Eustace's Travels. A week before I left for Europe, I received an official letter from Cassidy and Waldo's lawyer. They were seeking compensation for moral damages and unlawful sale of family property. Mr. Abbott, my lawyer, only chuckled as he read the document. "It's empty," he said. "The house was in your name only, and your daughter had no legal right to it. As for moral damage, it is almost impossible to prove it in this situation." "So what is this? Just a way to apply pressure?" "More like a last-ditch effort to get money," Mr. Abbott nodded. "I'll prepare a response, don't worry." Harold saw me off at the airport. He seemed more excited than I was. "Call every day," he instructed. "And if anything happens, let me know right away. I'll be on the first flight out." "Harry, I'm going to London, not a war zone," I grinned. "They've got great medicine there if you need it." "Whatever," he hugged me tightly. "Take care of yourself, you stubborn old man." London met me with drizzling rain and gray skies, just as I'd always imagined it would be. I checked into a small, cozy hotel near Trafalgar Square, and the first thing I did was go for a walk, despite the weather. Umbrella, raincoat, comfortable shoes, everything I needed for the English weather. As I wandered the streets of London, I often spoke to Martha in my thoughts. "Look, dear, a real double-decker bus." Or, "Martha, can you imagine we're in Westminster Abbey?" Sometimes I could almost hear her laughing, see how she would raise her camera to capture another landmark. I blogged faithfully each evening, uploading photos and describing my experiences. To my surprise, I gained subscribers, first friends from the fishing club, then their acquaintances, then complete strangers who for some reason were interested in reading the notes of an elderly American. "Your observations are so sincere and warm," someone wrote in the comments. "It's like traveling with a wise friend." From London, I traveled to Paris on a high-speed train under the English Channel. Paris turned out to be exactly as Martha and I had envisioned. Elegant, romantic, with a special charm that words cannot describe. I climbed the Eiffel Tower, wandered the halls of the Louvre, sat in small cafes, watching passers-by, and imagining how Martha would sit across from me, sipping coffee and sharing her impressions. One evening in a Paris restaurant, I found myself sitting at a table next to an elderly lady who, like me, was traveling alone. She spoke to me in English with a slight French accent. "America?" she asked, noticing me photographing my dessert for the blog. "Miles City," I nodded. "Oh, Montana," she smiled. "Beautiful mountains. I was there once, years ago." We got to talking. Her name was Odette Carver, and she was a French-American woman, widowed 3 years ago, traveling around Europe, visiting relatives and just enjoying life. "After Robert died, I thought life was over," she said, stirring her coffee. 42 years together is no joke. But then I realized he wouldn't want me to spend the rest of my days mourning. "Neither would my Martha," I nodded understandingly. She always said, "Live life to the fullest, Eustace, no matter what happens." We exchanged contacts, and to my surprise, Odette was from a town only 100 miles from Miles City. She had returned to the States after her husband died and now lived there permanently, only occasionally getting out to travel. "Perhaps when you get back, you might drop in for a cup of tea," she suggested with a slight smile. I make a great apple pie. I'd love to, I replied, surprised at how easy and natural it sounded. From Paris, I went to Rome, then to Barcelona. Each city gave new impressions. Each day was filled with discoveries. I sent postcards to Harold and Eleanor, updated my blog regularly, and occasionally corresponded with Odette, who had returned to the States before me. Strangely, I barely thought about Cassidy and Waldo the entire time I was traveling. It was as if that part of my life had receded into the background, making room for new experiences and emotions. When I returned home after the first leg of the trip, I was in for a few unexpected surprises. First, my blog had gained almost 2,000 subscribers. Second, a local newspaper wanted to interview me about my travels. Third, the fishing club organized a small party in my honor. "You've become a local celebrity, old man," Harold grinned when we met at his house. "Even Edna from the supermarket was asking when you'd be back. Turns out she's been following your blog." The world has gone crazy. I shook my head, but there was a nice warmth inside. A week after I got back, I called Odette and invited her to lunch. She agreed, and we met at a small restaurant on the outskirts of Miles City. Odette looked as elegant as she had in Paris. A slender woman with short gray hair, attentive brown eyes, and a soft smile. We talked for almost 3 hours, sharing life stories, discussing books, travel, music. She was surprisingly easy to be with. No awkwardness, no tension. "I'm glad we met again," she said as I walked her to her car. "At our age, it's so hard to find someone you can just talk to." "Why don't we do it again sometime?" I suggested. "Next time, I'll cook dinner. It's not as elaborate as the restaurants, but it's good enough." "I'd love to," she smiled. "But I'll bring dessert, the promised apple pie." And so began a new chapter of my life, with travel, new friends, and an unexpected but pleasant friendship with Odette. We met once or twice a week, going to movies, concerts, just walking in the park or sitting on my terrace talking about everything. "You look happy," Harold remarked one day when we were fishing on the lake. "That Odette has obviously done you good." "We're just friends," I replied, though something inside fluttered at the thought of her. Sure, he winked. "Whatever you say, old friend." The second stage of my journey began 2 months after my return from Europe. This time Japan, China, and India awaited me. Before leaving, I invited Odette to dinner and unexpectedly suggested, "Why don't you join me? At least in Japan." She raised her eyebrows in surprise, but her eyes lit up. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," I nodded. "Traveling alone is exciting, but sharing the experience with someone, it's different." She thought for a moment, then smiled. "You know, why not? I've always wanted to see the cherry blossoms." So we started traveling together. Not as a couple, we each had our own hotel room, our own personal space. But during the day, we explored new cities, tasted exotic foods, shared our impressions. With Odette, traveling took on a new meaning. Now I could turn around and say, "Look at that," not to an imaginary Martha, but to a living person who smiled back. The blog became a collaborative project. Odette took great photos and occasionally added her notes to mine. Subscribers were delighted with this plot twist. "How romantic," they wrote in the comments. "Love is for all ages." Odette and I only laughed at these comments. Our relationship was deeper than mere romance. It was a partnership between two people who had lived long lives, lost beloved spouses, and suddenly found in each other a kindred spirit. Between trips, we'd come back to Miles City. I introduced Odette to my fishing club friends. She brought me to her book club. Our worlds gradually intertwined, creating a new, rich life. Word from Cassidy came rarely and usually through lawyers. After a failed attempt to challenge the sale of the house, she and Waldo filed a lawsuit to have me declared incompetent due to age-related mental changes. The court dismissed the suit based on medical reports and testimony. They then tried to challenge my new will, claiming that I had drafted it under pressure from new friends. Again, they were unsuccessful. They won't give up, Mr. Abbott remarked as we discussed another lawsuit. But legally, they don't stand a chance. It's a shame Cassie chose this path, I sighed. I always hoped she'd come to her senses. People rarely change, Mr. Belcher, the lawyer shrugged, especially when it comes to money. One fall day when Odette and I were walking in the park, I noticed Cassidy and Waldo on the other side of the alley. They were standing by the fountain arguing about something. Cassidy looked haggard, gaunt. Waldo was waving his arms, his face contorted with anger. "Your daughter?" Odette asked quietly, following my gaze. "Yes." I nodded. "And her husband. Do you want to come over?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to go over to ask how they were doing, to try to make some kind of contact. But the other part of me remembered all their manipulations, their lies, their attempts to take the money away through the courts. "No," I finally answered. "I don't think we have anything more to say to each other." We walked on, but I looked back once. Cassidy was looking in our direction, too. Our eyes met for a moment, and I thought something flashed in her gaze. Regret, longing, envy. But then Waldo grabbed her hand and they walked away. "It must be hard," Odette said as we sat down on the bench by the lake, "letting go of your own child." I didn't let her go. I shook my head. She left on her own. She chose her own path. And yet, she's your daughter. "Yes," I sighed. "But sometimes love means letting a person live with the consequences of their decisions, even if it hurts." Odette nodded understandingly and squeezed my hand. We sat in silence, staring at the water where the fall leaves reflected. A week after that meeting in the park, I received a letter from Cassidy, not through lawyers, just a regular paper letter in an envelope. I stared at it for a long time before I dared to open it. "Daddy," she wrote, "I saw you in the park with that woman. You looked happy. I'm happy for you, I really am. You'll probably find that hard to believe after everything that's happened between us, but I'm really happy. Waldo and I are breaking up. Too many lies, too many broken promises. You were right about him, right about a lot of things. I'm not asking for money or forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I realize what I did. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Cassidy." I reread the letter several times, trying to figure out if it was sincere or just another manipulation. In the end, I decided not to respond. For now. Time would tell if Cassidy had really changed or if this was just a new tactic. Life went on. Odette and I completed our trip around the world, visiting Australia, New Zealand, and South America. When we returned, we decided to live together, not out of economy or convenience, but because we just felt good with each other. "What's Martha going to say?" Odette asked me one evening as we sat on the terrace of our apartment. "I think she'd be pleased," I answered after a pause. "She always said that life should be lived to the fullest, to the last day." "Robert would say the same thing," Odette nodded. "He hated discouragement and regret." We raised our wine glasses to our departed spouses, to new lives, to unexpected twists of fate. My story of winning the lottery and breaking up with my daughter had even made it into the local paper. The reporters had somehow gotten the details and had written an article about a pensioner who won the lottery and started a new life. I wasn't too happy with the publicity, but Odette found the beauty in it. "Maybe your story will help someone else," she said. "Someone who's also in a toxic relationship and doesn't know how to get out." She might have been right. After all, my life did change for the better after I stopped letting others manipulate me. I made new friends, saw the world, and met a woman I feel comfortable and interested with. I learned to appreciate every day, every moment. I never heard from Cassidy again. I saw her occasionally in town, alone without Waldo. We nodded to each other, but never stopped to talk. Maybe someday we'd find common ground again. Maybe we wouldn't. But I no longer let that uncertainty cloud my life. For my 66th birthday, Odette organized a surprise party, inviting all my friends from the fishing club, my neighbors, even a few blog subscribers who lived nearby. We had a barbecue on the common terrace of our house, drinking wine, laughing, sharing stories. In the midst of the party, Harold raised his glass. "To Eustace," he proclaimed, "to the man who proved that life is just beginning when you are over 60. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. I looked around, my friends, my Odette, my new world. Yes, I had lost my daughter. Yes, it hurt, but I had gained something just as precious, the freedom to be myself, to live by my own rules, to surround myself with people who valued me for who I was. To new beginnings," I said, raising my glass, "and to the fact that it's never too late to start over." Sometimes I think, what if I hadn't won the lottery? Would Cassidy still be in my life? Would I have continued to live in that house, feeling unwelcome? Would I have never ventured around the world? Would I never have met Odette? It's strange how fate sometimes takes unexpected turns. What seemed like a tragedy, a breakup with his daughter, ended up opening the door to a new, fulfilling life. And the winnings that could have been a bone of contention turned into a ticket to freedom. "What's on your mind?" Odette asked, coming up to me after the guests had left. "About life," I smiled. "About how strange things are." "Any regrets?" I wondered. "Do I?" "About Cassidy, yes, of course. About not being able to keep her from Waldo's influence, about our relationship falling apart. But my own decisions, not letting them manipulate me for money? No, I don't regret that." "I regret not traveling sooner," I finally answered, "and that I hadn't met you 10 years earlier." She laughed and took my hand. "All in good time, Eustace, all in good time." We walked into the house, leaving the starry sky and the past behind us. Life was ahead of us, not perfect, with the sadness of a lost relationship with my daughter, but still filled with meaning, joy, and freedom. After all, isn't that what happiness is all about? The freedom to be yourself, to love those who deserve it, and to not let toxic relationships poison your life. Even if it requires making painful choices, even if it requires letting go of those you thought you would love forever. I won $670,000 in the lottery. But the real win wasn't in the money. It was in realizing my own worth, in being able to say no.